don't know what I did, but I know I didn't do that.
Good evening and welcome to the Goffstown Select Board meeting for May 9th. First order of business would be the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you all join me? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business would be the approval of the minutes, public and non-public, from 4:25.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes, public and non-public, from 4:25.
Second.
Any corrections? Seeing none, everybody's here, so we can do voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. We have two announcements this evening.
You got
What?
4:29.
429, she only did one.
Oh, I'm
I'll
sorry.
make a motion, we do the 429, 2022 public minutes with corrections if need be.
Second.
Motion by Mark, second by Kelly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. We have two, as I said, announcements. First is an announcement about Parker Road. Starting May 11th, the town of New Boston will be conducting bridge work on Parker Road near Route 13. That end of Parker Road will be closed an estimated 2 weeks. Any questions should be directed to New Boston Town Hall, 603-487-2500. We have another announcement, and this is reference to Glen Lake Boat Launch and Waterfront Area Ordinance. This is a reminder that parking restrictions dates for Glen Lake Boat Launch and Waterfront Area Ordinance are in effect beginning May 15th between the hours of 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Parking along Elm Street in the area of the boat launch is restricted to Goffstown residents only who display a resident transfer sticker on their vehicle. Stickers for residents can be obtained from the transfer station during normal business hours, Tuesday through Saturday, 7:30 to 3 p.m. The designated trailer parking area will remain open to anyone with a trailer attached to their vehicles without restriction year-round. I just want to remind everybody, if you don't follow the parking ordinance, the fine is $100. There is no trespassing from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. on the Glen Lake Boat Launch waterfront area. Alcoholic beverages are prohibited at the Glen Lake waterfront along with any glass bottles. Glen Lake is a carry-in, carry-out facility. The above restrictions are posted at the Glen Lake Boat Launch waterfront area for your convenience. If you need any more information, you can go to goffstown.com and Property Documents Ordinance, Town Property, Glen Lake Beach Ordinance of June 2011.
Peter, just one correction,
Go ahead.
if I could. On the last bullet, it says the restrictions are posted at the Glen Lake board launch. Some may want to launch certain boards, I'm not sure, but that should say boat launch.
So that is Glen Lake Boat Launch. Good, thank you, Carlos.
Yeah.
Any discussion on it? Go ahead, Mark.
No discussion, just another subject.
Is it a,
Public service announcement.
go ahead.
For the town of Goffstown, we have a beautiful rails trail in this community. There's been a lot of time and development that have been put into it. Yesterday, unfortunately, we had about a 50 by 50 wildfire that was started accidentally, not sure how. But if you are smoking or you are planning to light any kind of a fire, please, when you leave and you're done, extinguish your fire. Do not cover it with sand. Sand does not put out a fire. Please use water. And if you're gonna use a cigarette, please extinguish the cigarette and take the cigarette butt out with you. We're at the high danger red flag day, class 5 days, which with the winds that we have been having, it doesn't take very long for the fire to spread. Yesterday, in a matter of minutes, just it went to a 50 by 50 square area of brush. So I ask, for the beautification of the rails trail and the help of the townspeople, please use caution if you're on the rails trail, smoking or doing anything that you shouldn't be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Just a
Go
clarification,
ahead,
if I can.
Carlos.
Yeah, it's also important to point out that you can't kindle a fire anywhere in Goffstown
Correct.
without a properly issued burn permit
Correct.
from the fire department. You can get them online.
Yep.
It shouldn't be anybody starting a fire down there for any reason.
Exactly.
All right, do you want to start a little bit, Derek, for 5 minutes?
Sure. Town Administrator report starts at 7:00. You have your meeting scheduled for the next 2 weeks. Tomorrow night at 6 PM, the Sewer Commission will meet in this room.
Got it.
And Thursday at 7 PM, the Planning Board in this room.
Yep, got it?
Next week on Wednesday, 6:30 PM, the Library Trustees at the library.
I'll be there.
And 7 PM, the Parks and Rec Commission will be at the Parks and Rec Center.
Good, thank you.
Next page, you have your assessor's recommendation. The assessor recommends a veteran's tax credit application for map 17, lot 232.
I'll make a motion we approve the assessor's recommendation as presented.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Collis, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Your next page, you have your consent agenda. You have employee status reports for a full-time grounds and program assistant, new hire, a full-time PEG access education technician, new hire, interim fire chief to fire chief / emergency management director, new hire, firefighter 2 resignation, police officer, new hire, Parks and Rec seasonal grounds rehire. You have the first half property tax warrant in the amount of $21,605,435.04. That needs a signature of the entire board. You also have the first half warrant for the payment in lieu of taxes for the 2 solar gardens off of Route 114, map 3, lot 47-1-SP, and map 3, lot 47-6-SP. You have a deposit voucher for the Grassmere Town Hall Restoration Fund for a rental. You have rights to inter on West Lawn Cemetery, section 1994, lot 184. Shirley Hill Cemetery, section 2, lots 50A and 51A. Shirley Hill Cemetery, section 2, lots 52A and 53A. You have an event permit for the David French Goffstown Gallop on June 25th, 2022 from 8:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. It starts and ends at the Parks and Recreation Building. And then you have an emergency relocation shelter agreement between the Main Street Kids Connection and the town for use of town hall in need of a emergency shelter.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Mark. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining, seeing none, motion passes.
On your next page is 7D. You have a revocable temporary license for a private drain connection at 5 Robin Drive, map 3, lot 39-5. Again, this is when private drains can be connected to the town's stormwater drainage system. And it's for the removal of stormwater and non-contaminated water. The license is revocable should DPW need to revoke it.
I'll make a motion to allow private drain license on 5 Robin Drive, map 3, lot 39-5.
Second.
Jim? Any discussions, questions? Okay, the motion was by Kelly, seconded by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining, motion passes.
Tab 7E, you have an appointment of the Emergency Management Director. The police chief has been serving in that capacity since January. Historically, the fire chief has filled that role with the police chief as the deputy. So
Okay.
just be looking for those appointments.
So you have 2 motions here.
I'll make a motion to appoint Fire Chief Sean Murray as the Emergency Management Director effective May 10th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Collis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? I thought I saw the chief was, posed back there going, I'm posed.
And
And the second motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Police Chief Eric Serino as the Deputy Emergency Management Director effective May 10th, 2022.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Any discussion on that one? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes. It is now 6:10. Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, we have an appointment with David Neiman. David, you want to come up?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm David Neiman with the Goffstown Conservation Commission. And I wanted to give you a briefing on a project that we've been working on, a land conservation project. This is part up on the north edge of town, before you get to Dunbarton, the Clark Farm. I think probably everybody's familiar with that because years ago we had a project that was on the right side of the road, the part looking down. We've been working with the family to conserve the land now that they have on the left side of the road. And also another chunk of land which they made an agreement with the current owners to purchase, which is the open fields that are in the wedge between Page Hill Road and Route 13. So presumably you all received this in your packet, and you can see from the images exactly where the area that I'm talking about.
You got these two?
So the covers a number of lots, lot 10-3, 10-3-1, with a carve out for the house and barns. And then map 11, lots 1, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5, and 1-6. Because that's the land between Page Hill and Route 13. Previously it was approved by the planning board to be subdivided into 5 lots. But the owners of it would actually love to have the Clarks purchase it from them and keep it as a farmland. And so there's 2 goals we have in this project. One is to continue to try to preserve Goffstown farmland, and this is working farmland. The Clarks, well, I keep saying Clarks because we're all more familiar with that, but it's also the King family. They're related. It's all the same family. 2 goals in this project is to keep that open farmland preserved and working, and the other is to preserve land around the wetland. It's on the second page of the handout where you see the wetlands image. It's a big wetland, looks like somebody's extracted molar. That's one of our prime wetlands, and that one scored, if you read in the prime wetlands report that was done, it scored extremely high for wildlife habitat and quality, so we'd be delighted to preserve some of the land around that. This project is pretty expensive as our projects go, mainly due to the purchase of that agricultural land between Page Hill and Route 13. That wouldn't be possible without doing this easement and selling the easement for that purchase to be made. So, and I think you can see from the budget, the easement purchase price is $525,000. We obviously do not have that in our conservation fund. For this project to succeed, it is completely contingent on us winning grants that we will apply for. We'll apply for a DES ARM grant again because of the prime wetlands aspect. Also, this should be eligible for LCHIP and Moose Plate and several others. So we've been applying for multiple grants. And yeah, so the only way we do that project is if we get the grants. As far as the time frame for this, because of the grant applications, it takes at least a year for all that to go through. So this would not close before probably June of 2023, a little over a year from now. But I just wanted to give you an early heads up on what we're looking at. There's always a chance to weigh in early if there's any comments or concerns. And hopefully, I hope you'll all be in support of it. And if you are, when we are putting in the grant applications, would ask if you would consider a letter of support in the grant applications. We'll have one coming from the Conservation Commission, but one from the Select Board. It's always a big plus in the grant when you can demonstrate that the community is behind it. That's pretty much the project where it stands in a nutshell. If there's any questions, I'd be delighted.
Anybody have any
to answer.
questions?
I was just wondering, that I saw the June 2023 date. Is that a drop dead date, or is that just your goal date?
That's pretty much the goal. That's just the time scale, like the DES ARM grant. You put the application in the summer, they make a decision by the end of November, but the funds don't actually go out usually till late May, early June, so you can't have your closing until the funds are dispersed. And it's a similar sort of time frame for LCHIP and other grant programs. So that's really what drives
Yeah, okay, thank you.
the schedule in this case.
Anything else?
Just a comment, if I could, Peter, I certainly encourage the submission of the grant applications. This town has done a great job of going after securing open lands for the benefit of all Goffstown residents, and they all benefit from the fact that these lands are preserved for their use in perpetuity. So, nice work, and certainly support submitting those grant applications.
Good.
One other benefit I didn't mention, and that is this is part of the John Stark Scenic Byway. And I don't think anybody would disagree as far as within Goffstown. This is the most scenic part of the John Stark Scenic Byway. In fact, I'd say that for the whole byway, but maybe people in Dunbarton and Ware and New Boston might argue with me a little on that.
Excellent. Well, thank you, David.
Thanks for your
Look
time.
forward to seeing you in the future on this.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Up next would be the DPW Director.
Good evening.
Evening.
Okay, so I believe section 5 of your packets have my info. A couple things tonight.
Before you get started, I want to do a little proclamation. And this says Public Works Week 2022. So, whereas Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, emergency management, and services that are vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Goffstown. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works professionals who are federally mandated first responders and engineer managers and employees at all levels of government and the private sector who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential to our citizens. And whereas it is a public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and the children of Goffstown to gain the knowledge and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of Public Works first responders and Public Works programs in the respective communities. Whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association / Canadian Public Works Association. Be it now, therefore, we, the Select Board, Town of Goffstown, County of Hillsborough, State of New Hampshire, by the virtue of authority vested in us, here do by proclaim the week, May 15th through May 21st, 2022, to be designated as Public Works Week 2022 throughout the town of Goffstown, New Hampshire, and urge all citizens to join the Department of Public Works and the American Public Works Association in recognition of substantial contributions of Public Works professionals and employees to protect our national health, safety, and quality of life. Given under our hands and sealed this 9th day of May in the year of our Lord 2022.
Thanks, sir.
Doesn't come with a bonus.
Nope, it's hidden. It's a little bit,
In fact, he's going to pay for that.
Right. Thank you. And kind of on that vein, there looks like there'll be some legislation coming through that specific to DPWs, primarily some designation as first responder potentially, some survivorship benefits, a few other items that are of local interest. So keep your eyes peeled, I guess, on those as they make it through the final leg in the legislative process and hopefully get to the governor for signature. So pretty good all around. We've got a Public Works Memorial up at Concord DOT that has an annual cleanup day, so I'm probably going to shoot up there into next week and help up with the cleanup. That's for any employees that were killed in the line of duty in the public works profession in the state. So good effort. And a few years ago, that was sort of a big push for us to get a new memorial set up for that. So thank you very much. I'll pass that on to the crew as we celebrate Public Works Week by working next week. Okay, so in your packets, I got a couple items. First one, we've got, now that we've received our new solid waste trailer, we have a surplus trailer for auction. I'd like to continue on and use Municipid for that. It's a 1996 Stecco brand live floor trailer. State contract for online auctions is held by Municipid, as we've said in the past, so it's worked out well for us, and I'd like to continue with that if the board sees fit.
Questions? Motion?
Make a motion to allow the trailer that we have up for sale to go with the Municipid, as we've completed with the state of New Hampshire contract holder.
So you're recommending the listing of the surplus trailer online for online auction?
Yep.
Okay.
Second.
Can I ask that the motion just be amended that the chair or designee sign the title over to the
Sure.
successful bidder?
So amended.
Second.
So motion, Jim, did you second that?
I did.
You did, okay, I'm sorry. Motion by Mark, seconded by Collis. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Next item up, last spring, we discussed setting up sort of a not really a pre-qualified vendor list, but sort of, for vendors that we have that occasionally when we go into a project, we might not know what the end result of that project's going to be. So I think the most common ones to turn up are things like tree cutting, where you have a certain number of feet or a quarter mile of road that might need some tree cutting. You don't know when you begin how many days that's going to take. Sometimes we find out, unfortunately, at the last day or the 11th hour that it's going to be to trigger a PO. So equipment maintenance is another one where we send it to a vendor. Maybe if it's a John Deere, we'll send it to what is now United Construction. It used to be Nortrax. For troubleshooting, they need to take part of the machine apart to troubleshoot. By the time you've got it apart, it makes sense to have them fix it while it's in there. By the time you're done putting it all back together, it might trigger a PO. So a couple of years ago, I gave you a list. This year, I requested to add a couple that have come up, kind of just as a run through. I mean, I know it's kind of one of those subjects that's kind of slippery to talk about, but just to kind of give you a sense of kind of what scale we have. Department of Public Works, between 2021 and 2022, we've written 90 POs, so purchase orders, up until this last purchasing policy revision that the board approved a couple months ago. We would need to write a PO for anything over $3,000. So in the last year and a half, we've had 90 such purchases, totaling about $5 million. Of the list that you see on the next page after the memo, there's a couple of new ones on there this year. As we've experienced the need to add a couple, but over that same time frame, 30 of those 90 were from vendors on this list. The average PO amount was just over $11,000 for those 30, and some of them were multiple. So, for instance, Central Concrete was the one that we used the most. We had 6 POs for Central Concrete last year. They are the state bid holder for trucked concrete and cast-in-place concrete, but we use them for precast as well, so it's drainage structures. And usually it makes the most sense to get those from the closest batch plant or precast plant that you can to save on the trucking costs and cost per structure. So we used Central Concrete 6 times last year. Core and Main, we bought ADS plastic pipe from 3 times. John Brown Tree, 3 times we used them. Brush grinding folks 3 times. Other than that, it was 1 or 2 for each of the remaining few. So of the whole list, we used 15 of them last year. and as I said, about an average of $11,000, which is not, under the new purchasing policy that you've got, your sealed bid process starts at $25,000. So for the most part, we're talking about items that wouldn't be going out to sealed bid anyway. It would just require me to pick up the phone and get 3 quotes every time we wanted to do this. It's tough when you don't know coming into some of it how much it's going to cost, but you also hate calling the same 3 or 4 vendors, you know, multiple times a year when they tell you, well, why do you keep calling me? You never go with me because I'm always more expensive than X. So we're trying to kind of, suit the best needs of the town for expediency, but also we don't want to abuse this. So we really try to save these for the smaller purchases. Just the only other thing of note really is of those 30 POs in the last year and a half, only 2 of them would have triggered the sealed bid process under the new $25,000 threshold. That being Central Concrete, we had 1 large order this spring for our construction projects that were kicking off this spring, and we had another for core and main pipe. As you might recall, last year we had 1 last order that got in before the state bid pricing was changed by force majeure, and our vendor there, because of the good relationship we had, was able to give us a heads up that this pricing is about to change, and we got a huge order in, and it probably saved the town about $60,000 on the purchase. So those are the 2 big outlier type purchases last year. So in all, the changes this year recommended would be to add a few more of the equipment maintenance vendors that we've got here at the bottom: New England Kenworth, Peterbilt, the former Nortrax, United Construction, and Bobcat of New Hampshire. Those are the big ones for our larger equipment or engine issues. We added Fournier Landscaping to the hired trucking list. Recently, we had called everybody else on the list and they weren't able to provide, but Brian Fournier Landscaping here in town was able to provide. So kind of dawned on us that we had him on the original list for trucking anyway. I think that's it for changes. Oh, one other thing I pulled out, we had Mount William for aggregate purchase, gravel and stone, but they are actually a state contract holder, so it's kind of redundant to have them on this list. But so those are the changes from the previous list.
Any questions? Anybody? All set?
I'll make you need a motion, that motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Recommend approval for update Department of Public Works vendor list as approved.
Second, as proposed.
Motion by Mark, second by Jim. You all set, Jim?
Yep.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you. Next item up, I have a couple grant opportunities with sort of short fuses, one extremely short. Just to kind of run down the list there in the memo there, there's a multimodal project discretionary grant flavor of grants. It's actually 3 different category projects, but one of them is a rural surface transportation program grant, which based on the funding timelines as part of the infrastructure related bill, they needed applications by the 23rd of May, so that's coming right up. This would cover 80% of project costs if approved. The thought there was for a multimodal project that might be eligible anyway, would be connection of existing sidewalk on Henry Bridge Road now, where it sort of terminates just at a dead end at the top of Henry Bridge up near the roundabout. Connect that down, crossing the small bridge, and then crossing connecting with the sidewalk on the big bridge over the Piscataquag, and then connecting up the other side of Henry Bridge to the rail trail, so maybe connect that whole loop of multimodal transit. I thought that might be a good way to
Just a little question on that. That seems to be an odd spot to be trying to put sidewalks in. That's some pretty tough terrain through there. We get to see a lot of traffic on Daniel Plummer with no sidewalks, with the people running and jogging. Would that be a possibility, maybe?
We certainly could. I think
Same thing with St. A's Drive, that it stops there too.
So we've got in our road plan for St. Anselm Drive reconstruction, we've got the plan to extend that piece of sidewalk as part of that project. I off the top of my head, I can't remember what year that's in the road plan, but we tried to time it on an off year from the presidential cycle, so it's coming right up. So that's, right now anyway, programmed in to the plans. Daniel Plummer would be another one. We had applied a few years ago for a TE grant, or one of the other, maybe TAP, I think Transportation Alternatives, we had applied for those two streets to connect down. I still think that makes sense too. Henry Bridge, the reason this kind of came to mind now, it is a little tougher, and we don't really have any plans for a full rebuild of Henry Bridge, but it's also extremely, as you mentioned, tricky spot. So right now we've got sidewalk ends, and then we have sidewalk on the other side of the road on the bridge, which would have to be moved, of course, to the other side, which wouldn't be too bad. But then there's sidewalk on the big bridge, but there's nothing in between. And of course, with all the hard work by the rail trail folks, that connection then from there up to the rail trail would make sense. But there's plenty of right of way from that stretch. The stretch on the steepest part of the hill is pretty tight. So thought it might be a good grant project, something we wouldn't normally have funding to do, and kind of go for, see if we could get it approved. I certainly would be more than happy to
We
submit the
just see a
stuff that
lot of
we've already
college
got.
kids making that, running that whole route around St. A's and down, or vice versa, the other way around. We're kind of dodging them all the time over there, so.
The one,
You have a public hearing.
I'm sorry,
6:30
timeout.
already?
I shall return.
Okay.
Good, tab 6.
Yep. Public hearing, acceptance of proposal donation rail trail improvements, construction, 480 feet of rail trail, and that was with David? David Pierce? In accordance with RSA 31:95E, Goffstown Select Board is conducting this public hearing to accept public input about a proposed donation of rail trail improvements from the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail, specifically for construction of approximately 480 feet of rail trail improvements within 2 easements previously granted to the town on 100 Mass Road, map 5, and lot 56-2, having an approximate worth of $6,100. A vote of this is scheduled for this evening. Go ahead, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I represent the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail, and our mission in life is to design and find funding and do construction. As a donation to the Park Department of their public park, Goffstown Rail Trail. Our organization would like to make a donation of that 480 feet over an easement of land that runs from the front of the Shell station in a grassy area, from the front of the Shell station to the rear of the Shell station. And then it would come out on Tateville Drive, and utilizing the public road, Tateville Drive, return back to the rail trail. This would alleviate sending bicyclists and pedestrians straight through on the old rail alignment, where going through the filling area of the gas station might be hazardous. For your consideration this evening, the basic motion is, would you accept this donation of trail improvement worth about, I estimate, $6,100. Could be more, but I think it's around there, as a donation to the town. You need to consider, there's probably 2 side motions revolved around this. One, it's been almost 20 years since the landowner agreed to provide these easements. So the appropriate thing to do is for the town to send a letter to the property owner saying the town wishes to exercise their right to build something on their property. I provided Derek a draft of that letter, and he can improve upon it for his signature or the chair's signature, but the correct thing to do is to notify the property owner. There's a second issue that doesn't necessarily have to be solved tonight. And I say that because my donation would be a project for next summer in 2023. And that second issue is how do we accommodate trail users once they're on that just over 200 feet of Tetro Drive? My recommendation in the packet you have is that simply paint bicycle sherrills on the pavement, just as we have here in Main Street or North Mass, indicating that the traffic lanes are shared vehicle-bicycle lanes. In the same breath, though, pedestrians would utilize Tetro Drive also. Unfortunately, there's no sidewalk on Tetro Drive, but that would be perhaps ways to solve that, but those methods to solve that problem don't have to be discussed or resolved this evening. So I'm open to questions.
And I want to open up the public hearing. I'll open the public hearing up. Is there anybody here from the public who'd like to comment on this? Okay, come up, state your name and address.
Paula Bedard, 36 Shirley Park Road. I'm an avid rail trail user and formerly served on the board of the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail. And I very much appreciate the work that Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail has put in over many years, lots of work, as well as the town. And I strongly support the acceptance of this donation. The plan for building the trail around the back of that complex is a good one. It's deficient just in one aspect, which is better accommodation for pedestrians, as Dave pointed out. And it's fortuitous to hear discussion about possibility of a grant opportunity that could maybe be used for a sidewalk, because in my estimation, Tetro Drive is really begging for a sidewalk. And that would be an excellent solution for that section where we need to get the rail trail users from the rail trail over to the other section of the rail trail around the back side of the complex. So I put that out there, to say maybe in the future that could happen. A sidewalk, building more trail along that length. You can see from the plan, the plan to build the trail behind that complex is only about 50% of that real estate. And along the Tetro Drive section, the current plan that you're looking at is to place painted sharrows, which is not a bad option. It's kind of a low-end option, and it only accommodates bicycle trail users, not pedestrians. So I just want to let the town know that it's a good plan for most of it, but it really is lacking in pedestrian accommodation on Tetro Drive.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anybody else here from the public? Go ahead, David.
I'd like to address Paula's last comment, and I have a handout, one for each board member, if you would. Paula. As I said, a decision about how to accommodate pedestrians need not be solved this evening. The short-term solution is certainly declaring the traffic lanes as shared bicycle vehicle lanes. Perhaps there is a long-term solution that is a sidewalk on Tetro Drive. And the handout I just provided to you indicates that conceptually a sidewalk could be built on leading to a crosswalk on Tetro Drive. I know the width of the town's land. I've measured the width of the pavement. And so in theory, there is sufficient room for a 6-foot wide sidewalk, as I've shown on this diagram. I don't consider building a sidewalk within the ability of my volunteer organization to fund. First reason is that a proper survey has to be done to delineate the boundaries on the ground, and then Public Works has much more ability of constructing 200 feet of sidewalk than, and we've seen that they do a very good job, so perhaps if a sidewalk was truly necessary, this board could work with Public Works to direct them to build 200 feet of sidewalk, as I've shown. But that's a solution that the board could make any time in the next year if you want to continue with a sidewalk concept rather than just limiting to a shared vehicle lane.
Is there anybody else here from the public that wants to have input? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Anybody here got questions for David? Have we done a traffic study on that? How many cars go up and down Tate Road Drive in a day, or?
That road is
Compared
not,
to what
that
the-
road is not measured by the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission in their vehicle counts, so, no.
But we could get a counter over there, couldn't we? Just
Yes,
to find out, I mean.
Public Works can certainly ask the Regional Planning Commission to put a counter there for a week. Well, they typically keep them out for 2 weeks.
I got a feel there's just as much traffic going through that parking lot in the front where it is now versus the car track versus going up Tate Road Drive.
I'm sorry.
I'm thinking that there's more traffic in front of the Shell station than there's gonna be going up.
Yes, where I've shown you as a possible crosswalk, it's after where cars drive into the Dunkin' Donuts drive-through.
Yeah, but in front where the trail goes now, you're supposed, normally what we do is just walk through the front of the gas pumps.
Yes.
The traffic in there is probably more than it would be on Tate Road Drive.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think it's something we have to talk about more, but we can make the motion now to accept for this portion. Derek, do you recommend that we reach out to the property owners for that prior to making this motion? Or can we do those two things simultaneously?
No, I think you can make it as two separate motions, to accept the donation and then to direct me to reach out to the property owner that we seek to use our rights under the
Yeah.
easement.
You wanna make a motion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Motion to accept the donation of 480 feet of rail trail improvements from the Friends of the Goffstown Rail Trail with 2 easements previously granted to the town on 100 Mass Road, map 5, lot 56-2, having an approximate worth of $6,100.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Collis. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
I make a second motion to direct the town administrator to reach out to the property owners of the easement to confirm, is that what you're asking for, David? A confirmation of work?
To alert them that.
Alert the property owners.
Were the abutters notified of this public hearing today?
The abutters were not, no. This was put in the, on the website in the Union Leader in accordance with the requirements of 3195E.
I personally notified an abutter of 2 parcels, the Langley
Uh-huh,
construction firm.
right. So they knew about it?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's my motion.
Huh?
So
Yeah.
I made that motion?
Who seconded Collis?
No
Yeah.
one yet? Okay.
Now we did.
Yes. Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Collis. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Mr.
And-
Chair, thank you for your decisions this evening, and we'll work with Public Works and the board to see what happens regarding a sidewalk. Just 30 more seconds, Mr. Chair. I'm chair of the John Stark Scenic Byway, and when we put up signage delineating where the scenic byway is, we purposely put signs on either side of the hill approach that Mr. David Neven talked about this evening, because it is one of the more scenic portions of the 34-mile drive as you're approaching that hilltop from both directions, and I appreciate his efforts to conserve that land.
So you'll be writing a letter of recommendation as well, a letter of support?
I can do that.
Great.
as
Thank you.
chair of the Scenic Byway Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Mr. Chair, I was going to ask, do we need to make a motion to have DPW reach out for a traffic study? We got it. Thank you.
Adam gave a thumbs up, he will.
Yes.
You coming back up, Adam?
Before you get going again, Adam, can I just ask a logistics question on this? Sure.
Which one?
On the grants specifically. Sorry, just go back to that 5C. I really appreciate being updated on all these opportunities and all of the, work that you're doing and researching and finding these. But a logistic question of, is there a reason why we would need an approval from the board for our department heads to apply to grants pertaining to town projects in the application phase?
That is the current process,
Right.
and whether to submit an application or a letter of intent, we would need to come to the board first.
Okay. Is there for any, just because?
Well, I don't think you want your department heads just soliciting projects or we may not be in favor of, or,
I think the fear might be if I say, submitted a grant for, went out in left field, solar all over Rick's athletic fields, for example, and then it gets awarded, and then it's like public information, and then the board finds out, oh, I didn't even know we applied for this grant, or we didn't bless that, plan, we would have had you
I
do
mean, I'm happy to
X.
double check your work, but I also trust you to apply for
I
things.
well, if you go,
Right,
maybe
so-
he put a grant in for an electric trash truck and we may not be in favor of that,
Just the honest.
Just for board awareness.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm just, there's a motion, a recommendation for a motion on here, so I was just curious. Thank you.
Maybe if I could, just speak to one thing about the Tetro Drive sidewalk. I think that'd be a pretty good location, especially if the improvements are made. It's probably small enough scale where we wouldn't really need the grant money to make that one happen. I probably could roll that into the road plan. We normally try to budget some sidewalk extension or replacement anyway. So if the board's gonna move forward with that plan, I'll just plunk it in the next year whenever that project's gonna be done.
2023 is when he said he was gonna do it,
So maybe we'll put some money in for.
next year's budget.
So Peter, so would the process be to ask Southern New Hampshire Planning to deploy a counter to collect the numbers? And then what would we do with those numbers? I mean, are we gonna-
I personally, I think we probably don't need it.
That's my question.
I mean, I don't mind doing it. They don't mind doing it. They like to, flex. And if a town feels that there's a question that could be answered with that info, I think just kind of anecdotally or watching it for the limited amount of time, it's quite a bit more treacherous and busy in the gas station parking lot than Tetro Drive.
Exactly what I was thinking.
I think David's recommendation was just based on if we should just do painting lines or actually physically do the sidewalk, but I'm also in agreement. Is there that we should just do the sidewalk for the pedestrian use, given it's on that stretch of road?
That'd be my recommendation.
Is there a
My only-
way that
Sorry.
if we were looking to move forward, that we could kind of just have it in waiting, and when they came to do other stretches of sidewalk, it would be more fiscally?
That's something you can do
Beneficial?
yourself pretty much, right?
So might depend design-wise what you would want to do there. If it's a Cape Cod berm style raised sidewalk or a granite edge, we don't install the granite ourselves. We have contractors
Right.
for that. So that would be a little bit of a lead time, and they are notoriously hard to pin down to a date. Just based, one rain day can throw off a whole, project.
So I was thinking if we just had it, like, also, we'll add this onto this project.
Well, I think what we said a little while earlier, this is something that he would put into, we would look at next year.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So-
could agree.
I could program it in as the
Yeah.
part of the sidewalk plan for next year. And then if I beat David, so be it, and if vice versa, I think the road itself would be safer than the parking lot is now, so, but if it's,
All right.
And it doesn't cost us anything to have Southern New Hampshire go out and do the data collection, so there's no harm in having the data, and we can decide what to do with it at a
I think
future
the,
date.
the question might become,
Prioritize.
what are you gonna compare it to?
Right.
Are they gonna try to set up counters inside the in, you know, in the parking lot as well, or the real unsafe, one of the real unsafe portions there is you've got people crossing behind cars that are backing out of parking spaces or backing out of the gas pumps at the same time. Then there's the car wash where they're flying out of the thing, the car wash bay with water on the windshield. You know, there's a whole, it's probably like a driver's ed video to navigate your way through that on a bike or with kids in a stroller, so I
I
think
like it.
Which is what we're doing now. I mean,
Right.
so,
And this placement with having the crosswalk behind both entrance exits is great. As someone who frequents the rail trail often, I avoid this area. I just don't even like running through this part because it can be difficult to navigate, people not paying attention and whatnot.
Perhaps they should just include the sidewalk construction in our road plan.
that's what I
And
would.
give
that's what
That's
we're
what
just
we're doing.
talking about for next
You
year.
know, where it's, was it 200 feet? You know, it's not a big
Yeah.
enough project to
Right.
really
Yeah.
spin Southern New Hampshire's tires with if we don't need them to.
All right, where are we at on these?
So that was the one point I wanted to make on the multimodal grant. The only, my only hesitation with adding that into the project we already have planned for St. Anselm Drive and Daniel Plummer is that where we have drainage and road work and slope work on those pieces, if we add a federal grant to it, we might increase the cost, overall cost and project oversight requirements of the whole project. We kind of saw that with the CMAC, project originally, when we just had the two small intersections. We got almost that whole stretch of Main Street done for what we thought that CMAC could have turned into at the end, just because of the federal requirements that are placed upon that. So you have to hire some, full-time construction, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if the multimodal is going to definitely require that type of oversight and, payroll reviews and, some of the prevailing wage requirements. To do an in-kind participation is really frowned upon. They like you to just have a project that you can give to a contractor and have it done. Anytime you start to say, well, the town's gonna participate here, it gets a little tricky and frankly burdensome for us to manage those grant projects when it's a mix of town and contract work. So the Henry Bridge piece would be a little cleaner in that respect, but we can make anything work. So if that's the board's decision, you'd rather go that way, any grant money we could get, I think, is a good thing, of course.
Do
But
they allow multiple positions for a couple different sidewalk?
we could.
Or is it,
I
is it
think
too much to
we
submit?
probably stand the strongest case if we can say, hey, here's a real need for reasons X, Y, or Z. I think where the whole purpose of this particular grant with the multimodal piece, I think, lends itself well to the connection to the rail trail. The proximity to the middle school and knowing their needs right now. If you're coming through at a certain time of day, you'll see a bunch of middle schoolers in a gaggle running up and down Center Street. And they find a neighborhood on Juniper currently, I think, because that's the only place that has sidewalks. And then the fact that we've got sidewalk built out and sidewalk on two of the bridges on Henry Bridge waiting for connections, I think it kind of lends itself well to a project request like this. The only other piece to add is that coming up soon as part of our final design work over on the Center Street Bridge project, at some point before the design is finalized, we need to talk about sidewalk. Right now, we've requested sidewalk on one side of the Center Street Bridge, but that presents some future opportunities to connect Center Street to the new athletic fields on Elm Street with a short stretch. So now you can start talking about linking community infrastructure with a walkable nature, and certainly anytime you can work towards a nice loop of activity, I think is a good thing. So I think we check a lot of boxes with Henry Bridge. We certainly would check plenty with Daniel Plummer and St. Anselm Drive because of the volume of people over there, and having a nice big loop with Mass Road is a good thing too. So it's really just a matter of what do we pick, and with such a short advertisement period when they were looking for feedback, that was the thing that jumped out at me for a quick return.
Any
Wanna
other
go
thing
through-
on this? Go ahead.
Sorry. Would you like me to go through all three?
Yeah, let's just go through.
As I note on that one, just for the folks at home, that one's a 80% funding at the federal level, so we need a 20% cost share locally or other source of funding. FEMA has got a temporary increase to their hazard mitigation grant program. This is also a short fuser for this increased funding. So normally the hazard mitigation program is a 75% cost share from the federal government through HSEM. here locally in the state. They've had this same influx of infrastructure funding, and they've decided to use some of that to make that a 90% cost share temporarily. So for this 90% share, they need letters of interest due by the 1st. One thing that we could turn around pretty quickly would be a replacement of the culvert on Montalona Road, which is just downstream of the culvert we lost on East Dunbarton Road the year before last, which was, they're the same vintage, same type of structure, very similar head wall constructions, and obviously it's the same stream, so the same flows under heavy storm flows. So I think we could gain some good points there, showing that we've already lost a similar structure just upstream, and that would make a nice project. It's on our hit list of culverts to get to, and maybe apply for some other funding if this fails. But I thought that would be a good one we could turn around with our drainage studies and permitting that we have for the other. We could do a pretty quick, get it out the door for this one. And at 90%, it's kind of a no-brainer. The only other one for that comes to mind as a hazard mitigation might be the Church Street. We've got the big granite block culvert that runs from Church Street underneath Mountain Base Yoga building, underneath a portion of the Town Hall parking lot, and then out through and eventually over to the river. That famously or infamously had a blockage during the Mother's Day flood time period and flooded part of Main Street. That was actually, I think a Christmas tree got hung up on a water line that actually runs through the middle of this block, or ran through the middle. I think water's since moved it. So less of a imminent failure and more of a, this happened once, might have been a one-off Mother's Day flood type thing, you know, of course, but that would be another one as Church Street's on the road plan for the next few years. Do we want to do something with that large culvert? It's going to be a pretty high dollar figure since it runs under a building and under a good chunk of municipal lot. Do we want to relocate that water course? You know, there's a couple things to think about either way, grant or not, but I think from a hazard mitigation standpoint, the Montalona Road, that could be, you know, as we've saw, that could be an overnight loss of an entire road. The Church Street, where there may be some flooding if we had a similar event, it's very unlikely we're going to lose Church Street or lose, you know, Main Street or Mountain Base Yoga, I suppose. But so my preference there would be to apply for that Montalona Road. We could turn around a grant application pretty quick. I'm less sure on Church Street how I would even write that up in less than, you know, 2.5 weeks to get it out the door kind of thing. So that would be my preference there. Then the third and final for tonight anyway, there's a couple more that are going to be coming in the next few months, but the state has got 100% funding temporarily for under the state clean water revolving fund for asset management projects. We've done a bit of this already. We've got some GIS and some tablets set up. We can do some inspections in the field, keep track of our mainly stormwater assets. But anytime you can get 100% funding, it seems to make sense. We could beef up that program. This could include having a company come in and set up some inspection templates using our GIS mapping and more flex that program that we've already started. Could be some hardware. We could always budget for a replacement for our GPS unit that's got to be replaced every few years, and it's quite a few dollars. Maybe hire a consultant to come in and do some of the inspections on other things that we haven't had the time to get to, you know, bridge or sidewalk infrastructure, maybe that kind of thing. So asset management, there's plenty of things we could throw the money towards, so 100% funding seems to make sense to me, so that would be a recommendation there to go for that as well.
Motion?
I'll make a motion to authorize the Director of Public Works to apply for the grant opportunities as presented.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Jim. Any further discussions, questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we've got a RFP for advertisement for our annual tire purchase and service. Good opportunity. This has worked out well. We've done this the last couple of years. Try to get as many people as we can to bid on it. Sometimes they fall back on the state contract, which was just renewed. Obviously, prices have gone up, but I think we could probably still get the best bang for our buck, at least putting it out there. So, with the board's permission, I'd like to advertise for hire, purchase, and service.
Can I make a recommendation? When you do these, that you put or equivalent, because right now, the tire market's gone crazy. A tire you were paying $500 for last year is now up around $1,000, so.
I will make sure it's on there. I think we have it in the write-up, but I don't have the actual RFP right in front of me, so I'll make sure it is, if it's not.
I'll make a motion to advertise for bids for tile sales and services as amended.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
Yep,
What?
I seconded a motion.
I said, is there any discussion?
Oh, sorry.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And last up, I didn't have anything in the packet for this, but more, I just hope to have a quick discussion about the ventilation and fire suppression project. I say project, I think it's probably going to turn into two projects. Seems to be the, most of the mechanical contractors that do heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and air quality don't necessarily specialize in fire sprinkler systems, so probably end up at least with two different contractors for this work. We met with one, let me take a step back. I did a little bit of research trying to find out who might do this level of work with a retrofit in an existing building, primarily parking garage or service garage type structures, not an office building where requirements are different. But met with somebody that has done some of this work to kind of walk the building and just give us a sense of what a project like this would even entail, kind of get our arms around how big a project it is. Based on that walk around and discussion, I think it may be worth all of our time to not necessarily open up the projects to any ventilation contractor. Please come bid on this. I think we're going to get, unless we spend some money up front to develop a bid specification that says exactly what type of fans, exactly where we want them to go, heating, cooling units, whatever. I think we're going to get a lot of people that aren't used to this level of work. I propose that we try to develop a very strong pre-qualified list of people to work with and then use the qualifications-based process to select one to actually work with and let them, on a design-build basis, tell us what, based on our building and it being a retrofit project, what they think is best to accomplish that. That would be my first preference. Second preference, if the board doesn't want to go down the qualified base selection process, which is what we use for our on-call engineering and surveying people in the past. Second option might be to put it out to bid for everyone, but as a design-build scenario where people tell us what each individual company thinks we need and bid against it. I just I'm starting to get a little worried that I'm going to see a stack of 25, 30 bids, and they're all going to be slightly different or very different, and I'm not sure if I'm necessarily qualified to say that Jim, his bid, even as much as he's done in the past for residential heating and cooling, that he knows how to do a commercial type structure. So I think trying to narrow down that field to maybe some of the bigger HVAC companies in the state might, for the ventilation piece, make a lot of sense. Likewise on the fire suppression, there's only a handful of larger companies in the state that do the commercial sprinkler work. So I think to be able to narrow those down and then let them tell us what they each individually think, and then you're not trying to spend somebody's time or spending money to develop a bid specification that now they're all going to bid towards. So it's just a little tricky where it's an old an existing building, and I don't have engineered plan set drawn up already for a new construction, which is normally how you'd handle it. But
Have you asked Lieutenant Connor to work with you on the fire suppression?
I have not. I presumed he was going to, so that's my hope. But I think it's still going to require a company that's got an engineer on staff to be able to stamp a plan that he can review rather than have him design the system. That's a little more straightforward. Open building, really not a whole lot of we have the wash bay is a little set aside, and then the tiny office there. But for the most part, it's one open space, so you kind of know your square footage coverages and ceiling heights and flows. So I think that'll be a little more straightforward. The ventilation piece is a little trickier. It seems to be anyway with the requirements we have for a welding area, for some vent systems that can plug into the exhaust and that sort of thing. So just a thought, but it's,
So I would proceed with that. Do you think that's the best way to do it? Then it's kind of in your realm right now. You have a budget to work with, and that's what you got.
right, and, you know, my big fear coming in to time now where the rubber meets the road was that the number that we developed for CIP to finalize that last April or May, is that still going to hold, you know, a year plus later after what we've seen the last year? We sort of threw it out there to the mechanical contractor of, you know, hey, ballpark, are we in the right realm? I tried to, you know, be on the upper end of some of the per square foot estimates. He thought we could probably still get it done, but, you know, until you see the bids, a number last week might be totally different this week. You know, you can see some pretty good swings. So I think, you know, first and foremost, we got to get fire sprinklers in, and that's going to be what it's going to be. There's requirements for coverage there. So I think I'd like to kind of lead with that project and get an idea of the number before we finalize what our ventilation plan is going to be. There's a couple of nice-to-haves on the ventilation end that aren't must-haves. So I think that's probably the order I would take it. So with the board's permission, I would narrow these down. We'd use the qualifications-based process, try to develop 6 to 8 probably of each vendors, and then have them present, either meet with us or present to us what they would propose and how they would propose to do it, and then select that way.
Got it.
But it would seem to me to make sense to further refine, I think is what I'm hearing, given all of that, what exactly the RFP is going to look like, so that we know what it is we're looking for when we go out with the RFP. And so when they submit proposals, they look more alike. Am I hearing this correctly? Because I think, to me, that investment of time up front to further refine the RFP, I think would pay off in the long run for efficiencies, time efficiencies.
So on the qualified based, with a design build end, we would say, here's our end result that we're desiring. And then it would be up to the firms that come in to tell us how they would get to that solution. There's some existing ventilation that could be retired in place or could be used, depending on, you know, what their comfort level would be with retrofits. So I think that's kind of how I would approach it. The sprinkler system is more straightforward. Hey, here's the space. Come tell me what we're going to need. The ventilation end, we really have to say, okay, our target is, you know, X part per million to meet, you know, either OSHA standard or ASHRAE standard or something for ambient air quality for an 8-hour employee window. Here's how we intend to, or here's what final goal we want for air quality in the building, and come see our existing systems and tell us how to get there. So we almost want to give a bunch of pre-qualified bidders a chance to see what our end goal is and see what we have, and then let them tell us how they would propose to meet it. It's going to be a little tricky, I think, because, you know, the more ventilation you've got in a building like that, the heating costs are going to go up, and how we mitigate that as best we can. I think it's going to just, I'm already expecting to have to budget a little more for heating next year in the garage, just because we're trading air quality for some of that nice warm air going out of the building, but you know, you kind of have to.
All right, anybody else? Good enough? Anything else from you?
I think that's all I have for public.
Okay, we'll see you in a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is the draft information technology policy.
Yes, at tab 7F, you'll see the draft information policies that were before you at your last meeting with changes that were requested. These were distributed to all departments as well as those employees that have town email. The request this evening is for the board to adopt these with an effective date of June 9th, 2012, and these would replace the Article
2022, not 2020.
I'm sorry, yes, 2022. This would replace Article 12 of the Personnel Plan, the use of town computers and communication equipment.
That's a book.
It is.
That's a book.
Comic book.
Can I ask, is the intention still that we would do an employee acknowledgement for abuse altogether as one?
We have an employee acknowledgement for each separate policy. So our intention would be to have them sign off on each separate policy, as in the future, the board may wish to update one of the policies, or not all of them, so yes.
So that's the user agreement.
Yes.
You're gonna have that.
Yes, there's a user agreement for each of the policies.
Anybody have any questions? I tried to read through it, but kind of went, there's a lot of technical stuff in there that I don't really. Motion?
I'll move.
Call us or Jim, somebody.
I move we recommend the select board adopt the proposed information system policies and delete Article 12, use of town computers and communication from the town's personnel plan. All changes shall have an effective date of June 9, 2022.
I'll second.
Any discussion, questions? We saw this last time, so. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
And at tab 7G, there is an update on our current contract for diesel. We had a contract for diesel that was October of last year through September of 2023. There were two separate, I guess, batches, 58,000 gallons, starting on October 1st last year, and then 58,000 gallons starting October 1st of this year. We have gone through our diesel allotment at this point, and we are looking at the diesel rates where they are right now. We do not feel comfortable bringing forward a recommendation to lock in at these current prices. Our recommendation at this point is to continue to monitor the diesel rates until such time that they come down a little bit, and at that point we'll see where we are in the summer, and the goal would be to add on to the number of gallons on the October 1st, 2022 gallons. We underestimated by we estimate about 33,000 gallons using the 2020 and 2021 gallonage.
So 2021, 2021, we only used 58,000 for the year, or we used the 88,000?
We used, I think it was, let's see, so from October 1st of 19 to September of 20, it was 84,000 gallons. So it was about a full year. We used about 84,000. But then last spring or last summer, from February through the end of September, we only used 56,000. So working with
So we didn't do a full year, we only did 6 months.
8 months.
8 months.
Yeah.
So we were off by 4 months. Same thing's gonna happen next year?
Yes, so the idea would be once we have worked with our current vendor, they would allow us to add gallons on to the end of our current contract, but they're not recommending we do it at today's prices, that we wait till hopefully those come down a bit. But yes, this would happen again this time next year.
And we're locked in with that vendor?
Yes, we have a contract that goes through September 30th, 2023, or until we run through our allotted gallons.
So our allotted gallons runs out in April again next year,
Yes.
and we can't sign with anybody else because we have a
No,
contract with them?
we could at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we don't recommend it now because the fuel prices are crazy anyway.
Yes.
So what's this gonna cost us, do you think, in the end run?
So we estimate it's 33,000 gallons. We're seeing about $3 more at the rack rate from what our, so that's about $100,000.
How are we gonna fix that?
So we do have the option to fill at NHDOT shed at Church Street. That doesn't present as big an issue for fire department out of Station 18. However, it is an operational consideration for other departments, specifically DPW, that adds a considerable amount of time and hits into their efficiency. We also have the option of using WEX cards of filling up at the stations. We still do, but again, with those
Paying regular.
you're paying their regular amount. So at this point, our solution at this time is to keep the board updated on what we're seeing in pricing, and then to continue to pay the rack rate at this time.
And how do we, how's the police department as far as gas and our other gasoline vehicles?
So gasoline unleaded is, we're still doing well on the unleaded gasoline contract. This is simply just for the diesel portion.
So, okay, just to make it clear, we should have got 80-something thousand gallons, but we only told them we wanted
58.
58,000, so we're short 30,000 gallons. And the money's gonna come from where?
We can bring some possible solutions to the board at a future meeting. Otherwise, we would overspend the diesel lines in those departments, so.
And what's the state gonna charge us? Or the state rate?
I don't know what the state rate is. Let me see if I've got it in my notes. The state rate is currently $1.999 a gallon. So they're just at just under $2 a gallon.
I was just gonna ask Chief Murray, have you talked to the state at all? So you're gonna be using it the most over at Station 18?
Good evening.
Oh, both of you, yeah, good. I'm glad you both came up, because you both use diesel.
We have, and we have key fobs from the state, so I just recently updated them. We're updating our list of authorized users, and I will be using the state shed.
Okay. And your other units can't come down from other?
Sure they can, if they're down in this area, then we can always adjust. They typically fill up around 3/4. We can stretch that out a little too.
Okay. Adam, what's your plan?
So I think unless we've got a reason to be in the village, either, a short project or, pothole patching or whatever, it doesn't make, unfortunately, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to lose what limited staff we have. We're already shorthanded. To send somebody, it's probably at least a 45-minute venture by the time they get there, wait in line if we're gonna have multiple people fuel up and then get back. And that only gets worse as the year progresses and we move into Pinardville almost full-time with most of our road work. A good chunk of it this summer is in Pinardville. So for me, it doesn't make as much sense, if I'm just gonna have to turn around and hire trucking because I can't get as much done. Now you're paying $100 an hour or whatever for a hired truck and losing it on that end. So I think unless we've got a reason to be in the village, we're probably not gonna use the DOT contract. I'm sure, I know already, we've got a decent surplus between being shorthanded and having a few individuals short-term disability status. Our payroll lines are gonna be well underspent this year, so if the board sees fit, that probably, how I'd make those two lines are probably gonna wash without much problem. My preference going into the budget prep for next year, though, would be to overspend the diesel line because that shows the actual cost of, and then not transfer money out of personnel lines because we're going to need to put it in next year. So I don't want to have to explain to the budget committee why we all of a sudden are down and then back up again in personnel lines and then the
We're gonna have to explain to them what happened anyway.
Yes, yes. But I think as
How
far
much
as
is the state, do you know? The state price?
It's
Two
two.
something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, right at $2 a
Just
gallon.
about what we were paying under the contract, I think.
They're fixed right now. They didn't, I asked the state fuel distribution manager if it held. Right now on paper, they're fixed until I think November.
Then we'll be back on ours in October.
Right, so by the time it's, ready to swap, in theory, they won't run out, but I believe they've got a max number of gallons as well on there, so
In the
there's a
same
chance that it
situation.
would run out before the actual contractual period ends, so we could make all these decisions and then in a month, they could, probably not a month, but as you get closer to the fall, they may be out too, especially if every municipality in the state that's close enough to a shed makes a similar calculus and says, well, if I'm going to start a new contract at $6 or go pay $2 for the state, and I'm close, why not?
So our plan right now is to continue with DK Burke at whatever rate,
At the rack rate.
rack rate?
Yep.
So you'll just continue to fill up?
Yep.
And the rack rate, does they deduct the taxes out of that?
Yes.
They do, okay.
Our WEX cards also they rebate the federal portion of the taxes, so if for some reason we get in a situation where there's a real quick swing and it might make sense, we'll reissue the WEX cards, but right now I don't have those out to every driver.
Okay, fine. Jim?
I'm just kind of curious, you order kind of by the gallon, right? What you estimate what the gallons you're gonna need for the year, right?
So
I guess my question is, why are we off so, did something happen that put us off so, it was almost half?
So the finance department negotiates the contracts. DPW places the orders as our tanks get low. So the contract's in place. DPW picks up the phone when we get to 30% or 25% capacity. My understanding is the negotiations last summer with the fuel company asked them to provide the number the last time we were using them. We were previously on Santa Buckley for a couple of years with a contract. My understanding is that the question was posed to Dennis Burke to give us an estimate of consumption, and what they did was apparently look at a partial year, because the last time we had Dennis Burke, I think, was a 7 or 8 month contract, not a 12-month contract. I think, in speaking with Danielle, the process going forward, we've got that information, and each department has what we budget, our number of gallons at the expected rate. So I think that information's there, so going forward, we should be able to avoid
So
a
there's a
similar
better way
situation.
to do it then.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we used an 8-month plan, 8 months worth of usage, not 12 months, and that way.
It was 8, so there was 8 months?
Well, it was 8
Well-
months, but we also had we had 24,000 gallons that at the end of the last contract, Santa Buckley could have charged us for those unused gallons, and we were fortunate not to. So I think the estimate was a little bit more conservative to try and avoid that in the future.
Sure.
Because we didn't want to get hit with that big charge, especially that would have come at the end of the year, so.
Come to find out, I probably would have been better off taking the penalty. Whatever, we'll have to make it work.
Obviously, it's volatile enough that, 2 years ago or less than a year ago, they were paying people to take oil, and now it's swung the other way hard. So maybe we'll swing back to somewhat
Right.
level next this summer.
So you don't need any action on this? This is
No,
just-
that was just bringing up
Thank
the
you,
speed on
thank you,
that.
guys. Anything else?
And none under the town administrator's report.
Kelly, you had something you wanted to bring up under old business. Is there any new business, by the way? No. Kelly, did you want to bring up under old business?
Yes, I just want to give you all an update.
It should be 8B.
Yes. So Derek and I met to kind of go through the old performance evaluation for the department heads based on the discussion we had at the last meeting. And we went ahead and added, if you turn to page 8 and 9 of the department head performance evaluation, we essentially took the previous version that we had used, and then just expanded on the questions. You don't have it? Okay, great. So under goals and objectives, that's where we kind of asked, what do you plan to do in the next year? Which is something that we can look back on, next year we can look back on these goals. Action steps by the department head, and also adding in a question of what kind of support could the department head use from the select board. And really that's it, just expanding on the goals. Other than that, the evaluation is the same as we have done in years past. And we had put together a proposed process for the time frame for which the department heads would fill out their evaluation, 5/10 of '22, and then on 5/24, they would return it to the select board, and then we would have about 2 weeks to review them individually, and then meet with them starting the week of 6/2. So we tried to map it just to hit right before budget season, so that way they have time to do that, and CIP as well. And then we would have a non-public meeting for the purpose of the department head evaluations, to go through that.
So how would you do that currently? Wouldn't this have to be for next year?
So the,
Because you're
that's-
asking them what their objectives are and,
yeah, that's a good point. So the initial review for the performance criteria and all of these other things would be based on the past year. And then similarly, like we do with, when we ask them about upcoming budgeting and things like that, it would be looking forward to the next year. So we're kind of capturing both things that department heads and the board were interested in looking at.
so it's kind of a semi one this year, but then next year would be more detailed.
Yeah, it would be the
Would
same
that-
thing, you know, their personal reflection on the past year's work, and then a look ahead, which gives us a basis to, you know, start that conversation next year. We also discussed looking at the job descriptions overall and the need for the department head job descriptions to be updated. So, not that we have to decide this now, but my recommendation would be when we start this process next year to, you know, grab those written in comments from the department heads and their job description, and then use that as the basis for the evaluations next year.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I think a part of it needs to be a look back and the other part a look ahead.
Well, the other one, you're setting standards for next year's
No, that's a look
evaluation.
ahead,
Right.
But again, didn't want to make it an extra burden on the department heads for, you know,
They
thorough
got
look
nothing else to
through,
do,
but-
they can take it.
Yeah, sure, in all their free time. So still tried to make it condensed, but also gives us the opportunity to have conversations with them. So if everyone's good with that proposed process, for the timeline, we can have Derek start scheduling that. We'll find a date that works for us. There's 4 reviews that we would be conducting this year, so we're thinking
Which are?
maybe 2 nights. It would be for the police chief, the DPW director, town administrator. Oh, sorry, I thought you wanted one for this, you're asking for
Well,
one, is that it?
I mean, if you're gathering information for next year.
No, they'd still be reviewing for this past year.
No,
It's
I'm
just-
talking about for the fire chief. We don't have much on him.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah, I mean,
his,
he could, we could
his
ask
would be
for,
setting objectives for next year, more or less.
certainly, yeah, we could take that as a,
Yeah.
just recommended.
Good. How are the confidentiality of these things?
They're all done in non-public.
Right, but then are they put in their files to be reviewed by future employees and employers and things like that? Or?
On an employee level, they would go in their employee file, and it would only be released in public minutes if we voted to move that into public record. So yes, to answer your question.
Okay.
Anybody got thing, Mark?
Oh, I'm in favor of it. Sounds good to
Jim,
me.
you're good with it?
I'm good.
Alice?
Good.
Okay. So we'll move ahead with it?
Great. Do you need anything
No.
specific?
Okay, let's just go over old business real quick. We did part of that, was old business. Anything on number 1?
No new updates for you this evening.
Okay. Then we have the typical out-of-service stuff. Roof leak and lighting repair. It's auto fair. Anybody got any questions for the town vehicle equipment out of service? None? Mark, it's your turn.
Do you have, usually have a.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, non-public, you mean a public comment? Is there anybody here for public comment? Seeing none? Go ahead.
Make a motion to go into non-public session, RSA 91A:3, comma 2A for compensation, B hiring, and D land. Anything else? Or was that it?
No, that's it.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Carlos. We're going to do a roll call.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
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 So that'll conclude tonight's public portion of the meeting. We'll be going into non-public.